They passed gifts down the table like I wasn't even there, embroidered scarves, sleek tech gadgets, luxury gift cards. Laughter filled the room, names were called, hugs exchanged. But not mine. Not once. And as I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, watching my son and his wife shower everyone else with love and sparkle, something inside me snapped. They thought I had nothing. They had no idea I was the empire they were all chasing. Christmas dinner. Funny how that night has always meant something different to me than to everyone else. When I was a child, it was the smell of pine and cinnamon. My father bringing home apples in a sack, my mother humming while she basted a chicken we could barely afford. And as I grew older, Christmas became about holding the family together. Even when things were cracked. Even when my son stopped calling as much. Even when his wife made it clear she thought I belonged more in a museum than at her dining room table. But I kept showing up. Because that's what you do when you're the root. This year, I wore my best. A teal blue cardigan, soft and freshly pressed, over a cream blouse. My beige slacks, orthopedic shoes, and a silver chain with my wedding ring hanging from it. Ever since George passed, I kept the ring close to my heart. They picked me up late. Her car smelled like a new candle, probably one of those overpriced ones from her boutique. She didn't say much. He stayed glued to his phone in the passenger seat. I sat in the back, the gift basket I had prepared sitting awkwardly on my lap. Homemade jams, hand-sewn sachets, and a card I wrote myself. They didn't ask about the card. They didn't ask about me. I walked into their grand home, a place I'd only seen twice before. Gleaming floors, tall ceilings, a glittering tree you could have seen from space. Her family was already there, chatting over mulled wine. I was greeted with a thin smile and a comment about how good it was I made it this year. I smiled back politely and went to help in the kitchen. No need, she said, holding out a manicured hand. Just relax. That's code for don't touch anything. Dinner was loud. Warm, if you weren't me. I sat at the far end of the table near the kids' table, my back straight, smile painted on like frosting. They toasted each other, her mother, her sister's new fiancé. Glasses clinked. Compliments flew across the room like confetti. Then came the presents. One by one, her family members were called up by name. Her mother opened a designer handbag. Her sister received a trip to Napa. Even the housekeeper got a sleek watch. I waited. I tried not to. I told myself I wasn't a child, that I didn't need a gift to feel loved. But when they handed out the final box, and the room broke into applause, I realized something. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd erased me. No one even looked my way. Not my son. Not his wife. Not anyone at that table. I stood up quietly, took my empty plate to the kitchen, and I left. I walked out into the snow without a word. No coat. No goodbye. Just the ring on my chain and a fire rising in my chest that hadn't burned in years. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. But I remembered. Every insult. Every time they made me feel small. Every time they asked, "Do you still want to be included?" As if inclusion was something they handed down like scraps. Back in my little cottage, I sat down at my desk. My laptop flickered to life. Most of them didn't know I still used one, thought I was too old to type properly. That's what her sister joked about last Thanksgiving. But the thing they never understood? I built things. Quietly. While they flaunted money, I invested it. While they hosted parties, I bought property. While they laughed at my old-fashioned ways, I was building an empire. 10 apartments. 3 commercial units. A silent partnership in a chain of bakeries. And enough in savings to outlive them all. But I never told them. Because I wasn't raised to boast. Because I thought love would be enough. But sitting there in the soft glow of my study lamp, listening to the faint echo of my heater rattle and hum, I realized. Sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes, the only way to teach them your worth is to stop giving them access to it. So I opened my email. Started with a message to my lawyer. Then a few to the tenants of the building my son's company leased for their boutique. The boutique that bore his wife's name. The one she bragged about being self-made. They didn't know the building was mine. They would. Soon. Because the new lease was up for renewal. And I had just decided. It wouldn't be renewed. Not for them. But oh, I had plans for that space. Plans that would make her Christmas handbag look like a clearance find. Plans I'd been dreaming about long before the silence at that dinner table. They wanted to gift me nothing? Fine. I would return the favor, with interest. And this time, I wouldn't wrap it in ribbons. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was hurt, though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. It was because my mind wouldn't stop moving. They thought they'd buried me under their indifference. That just because I didn't make noise, I had nothing left to say. But silence, darling, is often just the sound of strategy. I poured myself a cup of tea, chamomile, as always. The steam fogged up the corners of my glasses, and I stared out the frosted kitchen window, watching the soft snowfall. It was quiet, peaceful. But inside me, a storm had already begun. The boutique they ran, that shiny little corner spot with the gold-lettered windows and overpriced skincare jars? It was mine. Has been for 6 years. They never asked who owned the building when they leased it. The paperwork went through a holding company I created. Clever name, meaningless to them. But to me, it meant something. George's initials. A private nod to the man who always told me, "Don't underestimate yourself, Evelyn. They already do that for you." They were about to learn just how underestimated I'd been. I emailed my attorney again at 6:42 a.m. Please initiate notice of non-renewal for the boutique's lease at 113 Maple Avenue. Tenant to vacate within 60 days. I paused before hitting send. My hand hovered over the mouse. For a moment, I heard my son's voice, back when he was still sweet, still called me mama without sounding embarrassed. Back before the money, before the arrogance, before the wife who never liked the fact that I made my own jam instead of buying hers for $14.99 a jar. Then I clicked send. I wasn't just reclaiming my property. I was reclaiming my place in this family, one truth at a time. The next 2 weeks, I made more moves in silence. I called my friend Doris, who'd been wanting to open a cafe but couldn't find the right space. How would you like a corner spot with foot traffic and a 2-year lease on generous terms? She cried on the phone. Called me an angel. Let them find out when the new signage goes up. Let them stand in front of those locked doors and realize the empire they mocked, owned their future. Meanwhile, I visited the other properties. Quiet visits. Just to check in with the tenants. A little bakery in one of my buildings was booming. I ordered a cake for a private celebration. The young woman behind the counter smiled. Big event. Oh yes, I said, tapping my card. A family moment I won't be forgetting. But revenge isn't always just in the big gestures. Sometimes it lives in the details. 3 days before New Year's, I stopped by their boutique. They didn't know I was coming. I wore the same teal cardigan. My hair brushed neatly, silver bob tucked behind my ears. I smiled as I walked in. A few of her employees gave me that fake smile reserved for old ladies who come in to browse. I let it happen. Then I asked to speak to the manager. Her. She walked out from the back wearing a silky cream blouse, gold hoops dangling from her ears, eyes lined sharp as razors. Oh, she said, barely hiding her surprise. Did you need something? Yes, I replied softly. I needed to see the inside of the space one more time before the new tenants move in. Her smile froze. I beg your pardon? I pulled a folded paper from my purse and handed it to her. Just thought you'd want a physical copy of the lease termination. I know emails get lost this time of year. She unfolded it slowly, reading the bolded lines at the top. You're the owner? I am. You've owned this building the whole time? 6 years. I watched her lips part slightly, her perfectly manicured hand trembling just a little at the corners. I gave her time to absorb it. Let the silence do the work. You can't just. I can. I have. She looked like she wanted to yell, to scream. But we were surrounded by customers. So she stood there, vibrating with rage behind a thin-lipped smile, eyes darting like a cornered animal. You think this is funny? No, I said, smiling gently. I think it's overdue. And then I walked out. No need to slam the door. I'd already closed the one that mattered. That night, my son called. First time in months he called me, not just sent a photo of the kids or a forwarded Merry Christmas meme. "Mom," he said, his voice tight. "Why would you do this?" "Do what, sweetheart?" "You evicted us." "No. I ended a lease I had every right to end." "You couldn't have told me?" "Oh, you mean like how you told me not to bring anything to Thanksgiving because there was no fridge space? Or how you gave your mother-in-law a horse ranch and handed me a holiday mug with a broken handle?" He went quiet. I could hear the gears grinding in his head. "I didn't think you'd care. You've always kept to yourself. And now I'm keeping what's mine." He tried to change the tone. "You raised me better than this, Mom." I almost laughed. "No," I said firmly. "I raised you to be decent. But the world got to you first. This is me reminding you who I am." I didn't hang up. I let him do that. Let him sit in the silence of his own choices. A week later, I threw a dinner at my home. Invited a few old friends, a couple of my tenants, even Doris. We toasted with sparkling cider and fresh-baked pie. My living room was warm, laughter bouncing off the walls I once filled with baby pictures of a boy who used to adore me. A boy I once put ahead of myself. But not anymore. I looked around at the faces glowing in the candlelight and felt something I hadn't in years: pride. Not just in what I'd built, but in who I'd become. Not a background character. Not the afterthought at Christmas. The center. The matriarch. The empire herself. And as the snow fell gently outside, I smiled. They left me empty-handed at Christmas. But I had given myself the one gift they never could: power. And I wasn't done using it yet. They didn't show up on New Year's. Not that I expected them to. But I noticed. I always notice. My son used to help me string up lights around my porch. He'd climb the ladder with that confident grin and pretend to shock himself just to make me laugh. When he got married, it changed. First it was the busy schedules, then the "we're spending the holidays with her side this year," and finally, nothing but silence and a forwarded e-card with his name typed in beneath hers. This year, the lights went up without him. I didn't need a ladder. I hired a young man from the bakery across the street. Paid him well, fed him pie, and thanked him sincerely. He stayed for cocoa afterward, told me his mother passed years ago, and I reminded him of her. I smiled. Not because I was flattered, but because I felt the absence of being needed. And in that moment, I realized I was needed. Just not by the ones who had taken me for granted. The boutique closed its doors in mid-January. Quietly. No clearance sale. No goodbye post. Just a taped sign on the door that read "Closed for relocation." But word got out. Small towns whisper louder than city halls. A neighbor stopped me at the post office, eyebrows raised. "Is it true? You owned the building all along?" I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just smiled and asked how her husband's surgery went. It wasn't just about the building anymore. It was about reclaiming my name. Because when your own son allows you to be humiliated, overlooked, discarded, you realize it's not just personal. It's systemic. They think older means invisible. And I was never going to be invisible again. I decided it was time to revive something I had tucked away long ago: my business. Or at least the idea of it. When George was alive, we used to dream of opening a small community shop, a place that wasn't just about selling but connecting. Books, hand-knit goods, local art, and a small corner for tea. Nothing flashy, but deeply human. He passed before we ever got that far. And I convinced myself it was too late. But now? Now I had the building, the money, and the motivation. I called Doris. "Think we're too old to start something new?" I asked her. She laughed. "You're too old to start something small, maybe." Within days, we had a name: The Hearth and Thread. Warm. Simple. Timeless. Just like we were. The papers were signed. The permits filed. And the town started to notice. Some were excited. Others were curious. And then, there was them. My son showed up at my front door a week after the sign went up. I opened it slowly, wearing my teal cardigan, same one I wore at Christmas, now a symbol of the woman they overlooked. He stood there awkwardly, hands in his pockets, face unsure. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't move aside. "Talk?" He cleared his throat. I didn't realize how much this would affect you. The boutique thing. Maybe we should've. I don't know. Talked about it. Talked? They didn't even give me a gift bag at Christmas. Did your wife send you? I asked, voice steady. No, he said quickly. Well, we both felt like maybe things got out of hand. I nodded slowly. Funny how that happens. One minute I'm invisible, and the next, everyone's eyes are on me. I didn't mean to, he started. But you did, I cut in. You let her treat me like a relic. You stood by while your children opened tablets and bikes, and I sat there with nothing but silence in my lap. His jaw tightened. It's not that we don't care. It's that you forgot I exist unless I'm being useful. That shut him up. He stared at the porch floor for a while. I didn't fill the silence for him. Finally, he said, You really opened your own place? I did. What are you going to sell? Doilies. I smiled. Cold. Sharp. No. Community. Something you lost on your way to chasing status. He left without another word. And I closed the door slowly, with a calm I hadn't felt in years. That week, construction started on the new shop. A team of locals painted, rearranged shelves, hung vintage signs. I hired a single mother to manage it, paid her more than she expected, and told her to bring her son in if she ever needed childcare. She cried when I told her. Hugged me. Thanked me. See? I thought. There's still good in this world. It just needs the right hands to hold it. I spent my days folding hand-woven scarves, stamping bags with our logo, placing tiny cards inside that read, You are seen. You are enough. You are not too late. And every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the same cardigan. The same silver chain. The same blue eyes. But now? Now there was something alive behind them again. Something the family forgot I had. Purpose. The boutique space that once carried their brand? Now bore mine. And the town? They didn't miss the overpriced lotions. They loved the shelves of handmade candles and second-chance books. They came in for conversation, for comfort, for connection. I wasn't just back. I was leading. And slowly, ever so slowly, the people who overlooked me started realizing. I wasn't the quiet old woman in the corner. I was the root they'd all grown from. And I had started growing something new. I didn't go to their house the next time they invited me. It was a casual text from my daughter-in-law. We're doing a small dinner Saturday. You're welcome to come if you want. If I want? There was a time they would have begged me to come, not because they wanted my company, but because I was the one bringing the desserts, folding the napkins, watching the kids, cleaning up after. I left the message on read. Instead, I walked into the hearth and thread, freshly opened, warm with cinnamon and coffee in the air, and a small line forming at the counter. People were already calling it the soul of Main Street. One woman came in just to say, This place reminds me of the bookstore my mom took me to every Saturday growing up. Another dropped off a handmade quilt for display, asking nothing in return. Word of mouth spread fast. There were no flashy grand openings, no social media blitz, just whispered stories, heartfelt welcomes, and shelves that looked like they'd been part of town forever. I caught sight of myself in the glass of the front door that morning, silver-gray bobbed hair neat as ever, my teal cardigan buttoned halfway up, simple earrings, a calm look on my face. But the calm was layered over a fire. Not rage. Not revenge for revenge's sake. It was justice. It was power reclaimed. My son didn't say anything for a while after our last conversation. But silence, I've learned, is never empty. It's either heavy with guilt, or planning something. I found out which when a city inspector showed up at my shop. Ma'am, he said awkwardly, there's been a complaint filed about your permit for food service. I smiled. Come on in. Would you like some shortbread while you inspect the health code that's posted in plain sight? He didn't take the cookie, but he did look around. Spotless kitchen area, signed papers, staff with gloves and hairnets, dated safety certificates. When he left, he mumbled, Sorry for the trouble. Everything's in order. I knew who sent him. Later that day, I saw my son across the street. Parked in his black SUV, watching. I walked to the sidewalk, coffee in hand, took a long sip, and lifted it in a mock toast. His eyes met mine for only a second before he drove away. He wanted to win. He wanted me small, silent, waiting in some rocking chair in a quiet back room of their house while they decided how much of me they'd tolerate that day. But now? I was profitable, independent, admired, and worst of all, I was being talked about. The local paper wrote a short feature titled The Comeback of the Year. No names, no drama, just a beautiful photo of our window display and a quote from me. You're never too old to begin again, especially if you were never really seen to begin with. People clipped it out. A librarian taped it to the community board. A former teacher hugged me in the aisle of the grocery store and said, "You remind me who I still want to be." And then came the fundraiser. A single mother in town had her car break down. She was walking 2 miles to work every day. Someone mentioned it in the shop, and before I could think, I said, "Let's raise the money right here." We set out a simple donation jar with a sign, "Because we've all needed a ride sometime." 3 days later, we handed her the keys to a used but solid car. Fully paid off. The daughter-in-law saw the picture in the paper, me, standing next to the young mother, both of us smiling under the shop's old lantern. That night, I got another message. "We'd love for you to come over soon. The kids miss you." The kids? The same kids they let watch me sit silently while others opened drones and diamond earrings? The same kids who were told I was old-fashioned, too sensitive, too boring? I didn't respond. Instead, I made a video. Just a small one. A walkthrough of the shop, posted on a community Facebook group. I told the story of how we started, who we were helping, and invited anyone who needed comfort to drop by, no purchase required. I woke up to 4,000 views and a message from a local producer. "We'd love to feature you on our weekend spotlight. The message is powerful, people need to hear it." That weekend, I was on TV. My daughter-in-law saw it, of course. They both did. And I know that because the next Monday, they walked into my shop. Yes, walked. I was behind the counter, restocking handmade greeting cards when the chime on the door rang, and there they were. My son in his suit. His wife in designer flats. Looking completely out of place among the warm tones and mismatched teacups and handmade shelves. "Hi," she said too brightly. "Wow, this place is charming." I nodded. "It is." My son cleared his throat. "Can we talk?" "Of course," I said. "Is it about the ranch or the watch?" Her face flushed. He blinked. "What?" I figured since we're naming gifts now, might as well be clear. "I didn't think it would upset you so much," he said, actually trying to sound apologetic. "No," I replied, "because you didn't think at all. You forgot I was a person with memory and pride. You forgot I was the one who raised you to have a spine, and then you stood by while someone else stripped mine bare." No customers were nearby. No one else heard. Except them. They shifted, uncomfortable. "I think we got off track," she said, brushing non-existent dust from her sleeve. "No. You lost track of who I am. And now you're watching everyone else remember." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't slam anything down. That's the thing about real power. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And everyone listens. They left quickly. Without buying anything. And I didn't watch them go. Because I had more important things to do, like finishing the layout for next month's poetry reading, where I'd be featuring women over 70 who had never been published before. Or calling the young man from the bakery, the one I was teaching to manage inventory. Or finishing the note I was tucking into every package now. "To anyone who's been forgotten, may you remember who you are." It's funny how people treat you differently when they think you're just surviving, and how they scramble when they realize you're thriving. After my son and his wife came into the shop, I noticed something curious. They didn't come back. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Not even to pretend they cared. But suddenly, I started getting calls from people around them, extended family I hadn't heard from in years, childhood friends of my son who had somehow found my number again. Each call began the same way. "Hi. So I saw your shop on TV, wow, amazing. I just wanted to catch up. It's been too long." Too long indeed. One woman, a friend of my daughter-in-law's, tried to be slick about it. She dropped by on a quiet Thursday afternoon, pretending to be browsing, then leaned close and said with a smile, "You know, your daughter-in-law was just talking about you the other day. She really admires what you're doing." I looked her dead in the eyes. Admiration doesn't erase what she said at that dinner table. The smile froze. I didn't entertain it any longer. Because I had more important things to handle, like signing the lease papers for the second location of the Hearth and Thread. Yes, the second. A larger space. Closer to the city. With a full bakery kitchen and a room dedicated to community workshops, sewing, storytelling, and intergenerational mentorship programs. We held an open house that first week, and I spoke to a crowd of over 100 people, my voice steady, my cardigan now deep forest green, my hair soft around my face, expression calm but fiery underneath. People say getting older means fading away. That you're supposed to shrink, quiet down, accept less. But I didn't fade. I was just waiting for the world to get quiet enough to hear me again. The applause rang loud. Louder than I'd ever heard at any family gathering. Louder than any Christmas dinner where I sat silent while gifts skipped past me. And louder still when a local news anchor approached me afterward and asked if I'd consider doing a monthly segment on starting over after 60. Would I? I didn't even blink. Yes. Let's call it seasoned and still standing. That title stuck. And now, every third Wednesday, my face and voice hit the airwaves, me telling stories, reading submissions from older viewers, and offering advice to anyone who thought they were too late to begin. Meanwhile, back at the house I used to live in, my son and his wife were cracking. Not because I did anything to them, but because they couldn't control the narrative anymore. At the next Christmas dinner, yes, the one they still had without me, the in-laws asked where I was. One of them even said, "I saw her on TV the other day. Didn't she just open another shop?" And when they tried to brush it off, their teenage daughter chimed in, "She's trending on TikTok." There's a whole sound from her speech being used by creators. The look on my daughter-in-law's face? I wasn't there, but someone sent me a picture. A candid photo of her, wine glass mid-air, frozen in disbelief. Because for once, the attention wasn't on her. It was on the person she tried to erase. Me. It only got better from there. That winter, my business was nominated for a Women of the Year award by the City Council. The other finalists? All incredible women under 40. When they read my name aloud, the crowd went silent, then burst into applause. One of the women came over to hug me and whispered, "You're who I want to be when I grow up." The irony wasn't lost on me. A room full of strangers saw more value in me than my own son did. After the event, I was asked to speak at a local high school career day. I wore my best brooch and told a room of teenagers, "Build your life in such a way that no one else ever gets to define your worth, not your boss, not your partner, not even your family." By then, my son had stopped trying to reach out. But I knew he was watching. He was always watching. I found out through the most unexpected source, a podcast. A lifestyle podcast run by a young entrepreneur in town featured me one week, and apparently my son had left a comment under the episode using a burner account. Something snide about people rewriting history. Except I wasn't rewriting anything. I was revealing it. Bit by bit. I wasn't just a quiet mother sitting in the corner with a lukewarm cup of cider. I was a woman who built things, fixed things, and loved deeply, until I was told love meant silence and sacrifice. And now? Now I was speaking. Creating. Funding scholarships for young women in town. Helping older women launch second careers. Hosting open mic nights and art shows. Lending out space in the shop for support groups. That empire they pretended didn't exist? It was now the one everyone wanted to be part of. I got a card in the mail a few weeks later. No return address. Inside, in handwriting I knew too well, were 7 words. "I didn't know you had it in you." No signature. Just cowardice. But I smiled. Because I did know. I'd always known. And the fact that it shocked him? That was the final piece of my piece. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after revenge. Not the kind that aches, the kind that settles. A peace earned, not given. It's been 2 years since that Christmas dinner. 2 years since the moment I sat at that table, watching wrapping paper fly around me while I held nothing but a hollow smile and a cooling cup of tea. 2 years since I walked out quietly and started building the world they thought I'd never have. And today, I stood inside it. Literally. Inside my third shop, this one tucked in the heart of a historic district, next to a bookstore and a florist. Large windows let the morning light pour in, casting golden beams across rows of hand-sewn quilts, hand-painted signs with phrases like "keep growing" and "seasoned is sacred." The bell above the door jingled as I unlocked it for the grand opening. I wore my emerald cardigan that day, the one with the gold buttons. My silver-gray hair freshly bobbed. Pearl earrings that had once belonged to my own mother. And a smile that felt like a battle flag folded neatly across my lips. There were reporters. Again. There was a line around the block. Again. And among the crowd, I saw her. My daughter-in-law. Standing near the back. No cameras. No pretense. Just her, clutching a paper cup of coffee like a shield. She didn't come inside. She watched from the sidewalk, her eyes drifting across the faces that lit up when they walked through my doors. The kids drawing at the craft station. The grandmothers helping young mothers thread bobbins. The college students reading self-made zines under warm lamps. This wasn't just a store anymore. It was a refuge. A legacy. A quiet rebellion built stitch by stitch. She turned and walked away before I could say anything. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Because I already knew what that look on her face meant. It wasn't just regret. It was realization. She finally understood that the person she tried to make invisible, the one she left off the Christmas gift list, the one she treated like an afterthought in her own family, had become someone the entire town celebrated. And more importantly, someone I celebrated. I went back to the counter, poured myself a fresh cup of tea, and took a slow breath. That evening, we hosted a soft gathering for close friends and longtime supporters. It wasn't a gala. No glitz. Just a room full of warmth, laughter, and clinking mugs. One of the regulars, a retired teacher named Denise, gave a little toast. She raised her cup and said, "To the woman who proved that being left out is not the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning." I felt my throat tighten. Because it was true. Had I not been dismissed, I might have stayed small. Had they remembered me that Christmas, I might have remained their silent shadow. Had they given me a seat at their table, I might never have built my own. A better one. I drove home that night alone, but not lonely. The streetlights shimmered on the quiet road as I pulled into my driveway, not the cramped guest room I once stayed in at my son's house, but my own home. Bought in my name. Renovated in my taste. Painted in colors I chose. No more cold countertops or happy birthday mom receipts. No more being talked over at dinners. Just me. With bookshelves lined with memories I made after they shut the door. Walls filled with framed thank you letters from strangers who became community. A kitchen always warm, always open, even if I was the only one inside. And in my bedroom, right above my writing desk, hung one photo. Me, standing in front of my very first store. Head high. Eyes clear. Cardigan buttoned. That photo reminded me, I didn't just survive the betrayal. I built from it. The next morning, Christmas Day, I made myself breakfast, lit a candle, and brewed some cinnamon coffee. No invitations. No expectations. No need to shrink myself for a chair at their table. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a delivery box. No note. Just a printed return address from a luxury gift company. Inside? A set of antique china, floral pattern, gold rims, pristine condition. The exact set I'd once said I loved when I visited a vintage store years ago. I knew who sent it. But I didn't call. I didn't text. I just opened my cabinet and made space. Because yes, I accepted the gift. Not out of forgiveness. Out of finality. That was their way of admitting what they could never say aloud. They saw me now. The question is, did it matter anymore? Not really. Because I was no longer the quiet woman they forgot at dinner. I was the name on the store signs. The face on the news segment. The mentor behind a generation of women who thought they were too late, too old, too forgotten. Now, they know better. And next Christmas, I'll be hosting my dinner. No empty gestures. Just full plates. Full hearts. And not a single person in the room will forget who I am. Because I will never let myself be forgotten again.